With the conclusion of the New War, a lot of old questions were answered, but even more were asked. This is to be expected given the fact this is a complicated story arc that began with the Apostasy prologue years ago, and even then, some of its elements trace back to the Natah story quest. However, one of the main lore points that I was left pondering about upon completion of the New War was Balas's actions in the past. The New War finally revealed that Balas has been controlling the Sentients all along. His role as Era's slave was merely a charade to manipulate Natah. If he was therefore not a prisoner of the Sentients but their master, why did he give us the Paracesis all those years ago, the very weapon that could kill his allies and his soldiers? Before realising that Balas was in command, I believed it was because he was being kept alive as their slave, and he wanted a release from his masters. Yet if this is not the case, why did he give us such a powerful tool that could be used against him? Well, there are two main theories I believe are worthy of consideration, one which I reckon will be the most popular, and the second being the one that I prefer. So the first likely theory is that, as with everything, giving us the Paracesis was part of Balas's grand scheme. That he wanted us to have it in our hands at the moment of his confrontation with us so that he could use it to sever our current body and send us back into the void. This does fit pretty neatly, but my main issue with it is I feel like any blow at that time would have done the same in those circumstances. Any sword would have done that to us. I will discuss what I believe happens here in another video, but as Balas says, you can't kill a Tenno. Our body flickers with static much like it does when we are killed in operator form in the main game, so I believe it's almost a temporary death. It's just that in this instance he had the void portal to banish us while we were dying. I digress, but basically the Paracesis is actually a weapon that is effective against sentient. The stats and bonuses of the weapon don't lie, the gameplay mechanics of the weapon don't lie. So why is it now suddenly also the only weapon that can damage a Tenno that would enable Balas to send us back? In my mind it isn't. He just stabbed us with a sword that happened to be the Paracesis, because the animators for this scene would need a single weapon that they could use to animate all these fancy scenes, because if we had our own individual weapons, such as a Cronin or something like that, this scene would be far more difficult to animate for every single different melee weapon. So they had a one singular weapon that makes the animation job for all the scenes that Balas uses the sword in this scene and in Act 3 a lot easier to do. It's not that it's a special weapon that severs Tenno as well. It's been well established up to this point it is the sentient killer. So the fact it's used by Balas in the scene for me is just more a mechanical thing for the animators to be able to actually animate these scenes the way they wanted to. Obviously in the future I may stand corrected and DE may actually overtly confirm that the Paracesis is needed to sever the Tenno like this, but at the moment it is just an assumption. There's no concrete evidence that it's a special weapon. Apart from the fact it kills sentients, it's not confirmed that it's a special weapon that somehow does something to Tenno that would allow Balas to banish us to the void. For me, it's just a sword that he stabs us with at that point. So my preferred theory is that Balas gave us the Paracesis because he was in a moment of weakness. Because something happened to Balas that he didn't plan for, and that was that Umbra was able to break free of his control and mortally wound him back in the Sacrifice quest. Balas is so arrogant and he thinks always things will go his way, and that has always been his greatest weakness, and this is no better demonstrated than the moment that Umbra proves him wrong, and he gloats right in Umbra's face only to get a swift blade to the stomach for his effort. We know that Balas had his hooks in Natah, and so she arrives at this point and she did what she was programmed to do, protect him at all cost. With his life ebbing away, she did as her programming demanded, and she saved him by butchering his Orokin body into an amalgam of Orokin and sentient. In the Chimera prologue, we then have an out-of-body vision, where we witness Balas in the raw aftermath of this surgery. I remember finding this scene genuinely shocking when I saw it years ago, after seeing Balas reduced to this grotesque form. So we can only imagine the effect that this would have on the psyche of someone that it was actually performed on, who was used to having this beautiful godlike body, and all of a sudden is reduced to this grotesque amalgam. The Orokin, and in particular Balas, are extremely narcissistic about their appearance. When we encounter Balas in the Chimera prologue, he appears genuinely distraught over the mockery of life that he finds him in. And who can blame him, transformed from his regular noble appearance into this repulsive hybrid that corrupts the purity of his Orokin form. I believe at this point he is in shock by waking up and finding his body replaced by this thing he doesn't recognise, some horror. To me, he seems really confused and distraught in this scene, like he doesn't really have control over his emotions and feelings about how he's reacting to his body being changed. And so, in his desperate and confused state, he passes the Tenno the Paracesis to even the odds in hope that his torment could end. I think this is a more powerful and impactful reason, that this was a moment that Balas didn't plan for, a moment where he was weak and desperate, and in his desperation he handed a weapon to his enemy in the hopes that it might end his suffering. Of course, in time this feeling would pass. We see Ballas back to his usual arrogant self in the New War. Ballas is ultimately a megalomaniac, and nothing will really stop him in his quest to reclaim Margulis and destroy the Tenno. It obviously was just a bit of a shock that this wasn't something he planned for, and he reacted poorly, and that, in my mind, is the more kind of realistic reason as to why he gave us the paracesis. That's my just 2 cents on this subject, guys. As I said, I could easily accept either theory. I just feel the second one feels a bit more real, impactful, and less contrived, and we don't have enough evidence that the paracesis is the MacGuffin that also damages the Tenno in a special way. We don't have evidence for that, and I just prefer the second one, really. But let me know your thoughts. Maybe there's a third theory I haven't considered, and let me know what you prefer and what you believe to be the case. If you like this video, please consider subscribing, as I do Warframe content and I'm a Warframe partner. But until next time, guys, I will see you in the New War. Take care.